Hey neighbor, we're going to talk about growing beans today, and I want to do this out in the garden, but we got a huge thunderstorm overnight, so it's raining out there and wet out there, so I said let's just move in the seed room. We want to talk about strategies for growing beans. Now growing beans in different parts of the country means different things. For us here in the deep south, and I mean deep south, we're about an hour above the Georgia-Florida line, so we're about as deep south as you can go without getting into Florida or southern Louisiana. Well, for us, it is beans, we snap them. We snap the green beans just like you see right there. Now we put these up a lot of times either in jars, just beans, or we'll mix them in with potatoes like you see right there. Now this is a wonderful strategy right here to have a meal in a jar so that you can pop off in a hurry, warm this up, and you got a good sustainable meal, eating fresh, eating healthy, and yet takes no refrigeration. This is our last jar, so we got plenty of more of these to put up this year so we don't run out. Again, we eat these things a lot. But beans for us is green snapping beans. We don't do a lot of shelling beans here in the south, but we'll talk about that a little bit. Some of our friends up north do a lot of shelling beans. So let's get into the strategies of growing beans. All right, so there's two different types of beans. There's bush bean and there's pole bean, and both of them have their pluses and minuses. For us down here, mostly what we grow are bush beans. And the reason we grow bush beans is because beans don't like the heat, and we get really hot down here in July and August. We can even have some, really high temperatures in June. So our beans have to come off early. Pretty much when they get through pretty quick, we'll get 2, 3 pickings or harvesting off of them at the most, and then the sun just starts blistering those vines and they go back. We can grow them again in the fall, get a good fall crop, but we just cannot grow beans here in the south in late June, July, and August. Therefore, we don't do a lot of pole beans. Now, for our friends up north, yes, y'all can do a lot of pole beans up there because the weather works fine for you. Up there, you've got cooler temperatures right there. We got some friends up in Virginia and up in Ohio that love to grow pole beans, and they can get harvest all of them throughout the summertime. It works wonderful there. What happens when you have high temperatures is beans will throw the blooms off, so therefore they just don't produce. All right, so let's talk about some varieties specific to particular regions. As I said, bush beans are our thing down here, but a lot of people up north also like growing bush beans too. They normally don't last as long, but you don't have as much invested in them because you don't have to do the trellis thing, and they normally don't last long. So if you want something that's quick and to be done with and to move on to something else, bush bean is the way to go. So let's start with jade bush bean here. This is probably one of the most popular bush beans that there are. When I talk to our customers up north, Virginia on up, well, really North Carolina on up, they love jade bush bean. I've grown it before, it's an absolutely good one. Another good one here is Bronco. Another good popular one is Contender. All those are really good bush beans. Now the one that I am particularly fond of down here in the deep south is Green Blaze. This is a variety that is our variety right here. I did a lot of research to find this right here, and the reason it is the most heat tolerant green bean that I know of. Therefore, it does extremely well for us. Now this, along with those others right there, are straight, nice, round beans, which is what we like. I don't grow a lot of flat beans. Most of our beans are round and they're straight. We snap them, but you could just snap the ends off of them. But this bean right here works wonderful for us because it produces well every time. It's a nice, has a nice bush growing habit to it. Loads up with beans, but yet it produces in more heat than any other variety that I know of. Therefore, for us here, if we get one of those hot spells, this one works good for us. I grew it last fall. It did wonderful last fall too. So for me, it's pretty much Hoss Green Blaze. Now, pole beans, on the other hand, like I said, you got the trellis, you got more invested in pole beans, but you get a longer harvest off of them. And if you live in an area on up north where don't get that blistering heat we do, heck, you could get beans all the way into frost. So let's look at a couple varieties of those. Kentucky Blue Pole Bean, which is a good one there, very popular one. Probably the most popular one out there is Blue Lake Pole Bean right there. And we have an heirloom that we sell a lot of called Rattlesnake Pole Bean right there. That one right there, for you guys that love those heirlooms, that's a good one there. So with pole beans, you don't have to, if you got a smaller area, you got that trellis system there, so you can grow pole beans on a smaller area than you normally can on bush beans. I will plant probably about 30 to 40 feet of one row of bush beans, and that will produce enough for us to eat fresh and to put up pretty much what we need for the next year. So let's talk about fertilization. How do you grow those beans? Well, beans are a legume, therefore they don't take a lot of fertility. My strategy on growing beans is I like to incorporate our complete organic fertilizer before I plant as a pre-plant. And then I'm putting mine on drip tape because we can turn off dry down here. But I don't, I'm planting mine in the same spot as I have my tomatoes and peppers. But one thing I'm doing is I'm separating that from my drip tape with this valve right here. So when I inject my fertilizer for my tomatoes and peppers, I'm not giving them the same amount of fertilizer that I am my beans, because beans, legumes don't take a lot of fertilizer. You can pretty much do a pre-plant fertilizer and get by with that. If you fertilize beans too much, you will make more vine, more bush, and they won't produce as much bean. And we're all about producing beans there. So be careful. Over fertilizing, especially with nitrogen on beans, will cause excessive growth and not as much set for beans. That's the reason it's important if you're using our drip tape system there to just shut off that row right there, so when you're fertilizing, and you can control your fertility on your beans versus your nitrogen and your fertilizer and your heavy feeders such as peppers, tomatoes, and corn. All right, inoculant. With legumes, we like to use inoculant. Now, inoculant is a beneficial bacteria that you need when you're growing legumes. It helps that plant become healthier. It helps it with its relationship with the nodules of the nitrogen fixation. It helps that plant perform the best. Now, here's the deal on inoculants. If you have grown beans in the past in that location, you have probably got this beneficial bacteria already present in your soil. But if you've not grown beans in that location before, then you will need to add an inoculant. Now, I normally add inoculant for just insurance policy anytime I plant. This right here is a shaker can right there, and they are different inoculants for different type of legumes. So you want to make sure you're using an inoculant specifically for beans when you're planting beans, because if you're planting clovers or things like that, it takes a different strain of inoculant. But what's great about this is it's a shaker can there, and you just go through there, shake this in the fur when you plant, and you're introducing that inoculant, that beneficial bacteria to that plant, that legume, to help that plant grow off and be healthier. All right, we talked about fertilizer, don't take much. Let's talk about pest control with beans. Now, beans, pretty much in the spring of the year, I don't have a lot of problems, but you can have some problems with aphids. You can have some problems with cucurio stinging a little bit in the springtime on beans, not near as much as we do cowpeas, but you can have some pest problems there. One of the worst problems you can have is rust, which is a leaf disease. And if you know what rust is, it looks just like rust on that leaf there. So a good strategy to use as a spray program is use one of these insecticides right here. Now, both of these are organic. We got neem oil and we got Monterey garden insect spray, which is spinosad. You can rotate these with this product right here. Now, this is the best fungicide for beans out there that I know of. It's called Fungamax, and it's highly effective against rust. So what I would do is mix these two together, stay on a pretty good spray schedule. The next week I would mix these two together, and that'll keep those pests, those insects, and that disease at bay, so they won't affect your harvest on your beans. So if you're new to growing beans, I think bush beans are probably the easiest for you to grow. So you want to try to grow those in your garden. Now, beans are not hard to grow. They don't take up a lot of room, but they give you a lot of food. And I feel like they're one of the things that people overlook in gardening is green beans. But I can tell you this is a huge food source for our family. So I would encourage you to try growing beans if you've never grown them before.